Hello, and thanks for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. Today I want to tell you about the Phoenix family who never heard of finders keepers, an incredibly stupid plan for a smart gun, and another about face from the Amber Alert in Chief, plus lots more. But before we get started, I want to tell you about the cruelty-free, gluten-free, non-GMO, zero trans fat night vision products offered to you by our friends at TNVC.com, just like Mom used to make. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. Check out this Phoenix family who found a bag full of guns while they were digging to plant a tree and called the police. I don't know what they were actually digging for, but unless they're unusually stupid, they ought to know better than to plant a tree within inches of a wall. At first, I thought maybe they were burying a pet based on the shape of the hole, then my dumbass realized the shape of the hole was determined by the object they found. Now, I know what you're thinking. According to the United States Supreme Court ruling of finders versus keepers, they are entitled to keep that bag o' guns, but given the condition these guns were in, maybe they thought they were doing the right thing. The real crime here was that whoever buried these guns did heck all to preserve them. Still, they probably could have saved those two machine pistols and the AR. They might have even recovered the Galil to working order, even if the barrel is too rusted to hit a barn from the inside. You might be surprised how well you can restore something with some petroleum products and elbow grease. A while back, I did a video where I restored a friend's Kimber, which spent a couple of weeks on the bottom of the ocean, and I was amazed to find that it functioned properly, or at least as well as you can expect for a 1911 anyway. All right, here we go. Oh. Phoenix PD apparently photographs evidence with a potato, so I can't tell how many holes are in that AR receiver, but it is definitely short enough to be an NFA device, which means the Mac and Micro Uzi might go burr, but the lack of stock on both probably hints they were purchased as regular closed-bolt Title I pistols. The department's Facebook post claims detectives will investigate if these firearms were used in any crimes, but that seems unlikely given the condition they're in. There are obviously no fingerprints on them, so the most they can really do is get a serial number off them. Even if a serial number seems to be obliterated by rust, the stamping process hardens the material underneath, so the lab can sand it smooth and etch the surface with acid to make the number visible again. But once they have the serial number, it's not like they can just pull up the tape from a bank robbery and clickety-clackety their keyboards while saying "enhance" until the serial number is visible. All they can do is call the manufacturer, who will give them the distributor the gun shipped to, who will in turn give them the dealer it's shipped to, who will pull the 4473 and tell them who originally purchased the gun. But that's pretty much a dead end unless the original owner is already a suspect for an unsolved crime. Odds are the gun was stolen from the original owner anyway. And you can't match the rifling to bullets recovered from a crime scene either because the bores are obviously rusted all to hell. The unique microscopic grooves that make it possible to match a recovered bullet to a gun only work if the gun is relatively unchanged. It isn't some kind of arcane sorcery. The way it works is you recover a bullet from a crime scene and you find a gun you think might have been used in that crime. Then you fire another bullet from the gun into a barrel of water. An expert examines both bullets under a microscope and gives his opinion as to whether they match. This part is rather subjective and not conclusive, but if the gun in question hasn't been fired at all and stored in gentle conditions, the match can be pretty solid. If a couple hundred rounds were fired and the bore was cleaned aggressively, maybe it's harder to say for sure. If the guns were buried in a duffel bag and rusted all to hell and back, there is simply no way. They might have a little bit more luck matching a fired case from the guns from a case recovered at a crime scene, but it's hard to tell from the pictures. But even if they were in good condition, it's not like you can just chuck them in the magic computer box and wait for a match. That's just not how it works. Remember I said you have to suspect that a gun was used in a specific crime? Matching a recovered projectile from a suspect gun requires expert human judgment. So unless some Eastside Mesa Loco Vato walks into the PD saying, "Hey Holmes, I heard you found some guns, eh? Where they at, eh?" I don't think they have much chance of matching these guns with any particular crime. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I reported on a whole grip of control freak bills filed by Carolyn Maloney? One of them would require all new guns to be so-called smart guns, which I think is pretty dumb considering how unreliable biometrics are. Can you imagine trying to use your gun and your odds of getting it to work are about the same as your odds of getting your phone to unlock on the first try? And that's without sweat or blood on your fingers. But as stupid as smart guns are, here's something even dumber. A paper published by Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute proposes using artificial intelligence to assess the ethical validity of a situation before enabling a weapon. The idea is that AI would understand the only ethical use of a weapon out in public would be for self-defense. So if it doesn't detect conditions which would require self-defense, it locks the smoke pole up, but when it recognizes it's at an acceptable place, like a range or out in the woods, it allows the device to function. I mean, where do I even start? There is just so much obviously wrong with this. Let's start with some of the technical issues. The obvious elephant in the room is that AI is still in its infancy and has trouble telling the difference between a dog and a muffin, or recognizing black people. We're still trying to teach computers not to accidentally kill people, so I think we're a long way off from AI that can accurately assess ethical dilemmas which human beings have a hard time analyzing. I mean, even when we have the benefit of multiple video angles, eyewitness accounts, and weeks to scrutinize, we still can't all agree on whether a shooting is justified. How could we possibly expect a machine to get it right? To some extent, this is more of a philosophical issue than a technical one. If human beings don't all agree on what is ethical, is it ever possible for computers to make that call no matter how advanced the AI? But even if we grant this for the sake of discussion, there's another technical hurdle. The device itself isn't likely to have enough horsepower to run the sophisticated software it would need, at least not anytime soon. Moore's law has kind of petered out, so it's not likely that we would see that kind of processing available locally, which means the AI would have to be running remotely, which introduces latency issues at best, and what happens if the connection is down. And then there is the more basic problem that this whole idea assumes the AI has access to unobstructed audio and video. But if you're attacked, how likely is that? And where are these sensors located? Do I have to wear a body cam like a cop for this thing to work? If the camera is on the gun, it won't see anything while it's in the holster, which means it won't see the action that made me decide to draw. And if that decision doesn't come until the attacker is at contact range, what data will the AI have to work with? Look, I can't possibly detail all the horrifying ways this is a bad idea, but I think what's most unsettling to me is how it illustrates how absolutely delusional these folks are who wrote the paper. I mean, they are presumably smart people, but they seem to have constructed a two-dimensional caricature of what a shooting incident looks like, which has practically no resemblance to reality. I just don't think it's the kind of thing human beings can even get our heads around in every case, let alone depend on a machine to get right. What do you guys think? Comment below. Hey, remember when I reported the White House had no concrete plans for gun control? Good times, right? Yeah, Mr. I have candy in my pocket just for you is already changing his befuddled little mind again. I am Jack's complete lack of surprise. Moms looking for action began pressuring Stranger Danger for action, accusing him of failing to act on campaign promises. The Karen Collective is demanding he appoint a gun czar, which basically translates to, make sure you do all the crazy shit Beto O'Rourke proposes. Apparently, he was eager to hear from his good friends in Moms Looking for Action because his administration is now considering an executive order to require buyers of so-called ghost guns to submit to a background check. Joe, bless your heart. The whole point of home manufacturing guns is to avoid government intrusion. You can't stop people from making guns at home. Like, literally, you are unable to stop them from doing it. I mean, you also don't have the constitutional authority to simply decree something as a gun when it doesn't meet the statutory definition, but I know old-timey concepts like the Constitution are unlikely to get in your way, even if you were probably around when it was written. But my point is that even if it were legal for you to do so, it would make less sense than trying to ban making meth, and we've seen how well that worked out. Because once I have made my so-called ghost gun, you can't tell when it was made. If I had to make a prediction, I would say Uncle Touchy is going to continue to flirt with authoritarian policies and pull back many times before he ever gets around to doing anything substantial. If he ever does. He's never exactly been the type to take bold, unilateral action. You know the difference between stranger danger and a book? A book has a spine. Thankfully, that plays in our favor for the most part. He will, of course, be easily cowed by the heifers at moms looking for action, but he won't have the cojones to go through with anything significant unless Congress puts legislation on his desk. But hey, I could be wrong. It happened once before. I have even intentionally placed several errors carefully throughout this video.
Kids, can you find them? When you hear one, jump up and turn around. That'd crack me up.
I used to read the t-shirt winning comments in the news, and there were some really well-written ones, but people tended to drop off during that segment, and the main goal here is for me to entertain you, so I stopped doing it. However, the winning comment from last week was so good, I have got to share it with you. What's even more impressive is this Ode to Liberty was penned by a Canuckistani national. Canuck Wolfman wrote, "So I usually do a bit of off-the-cuff creative writing for these things. It's fun, it gives me a chance to stretch my legs, and it might win me a shirt. I'm going a bit more serious today, though, because I feel today's lucky words are a bit more serious. The simple fact is that if you do not have a gun, you're at the mercy of those who do. And not just because of the obvious. A person with a gun doesn't have to threaten you with it directly to control you. All they have to do is refuse to protect you unless you do what they say. And if you disagree with that, I'd like to point out those law enforcement agencies who refuse to protect black students trying to go to formerly white schools once upon a time were making their feelings on integration pretty damn clear. If someone else can decide whether or not you live or die, they can control you, whether they're the one directly threatening you with harm or not. Anyone who wants to deny you the ability to defend yourself wants that control. They want to be able to dictate to you and to deny you any meaningful recourse should you object. The civil rights titans of yesteryear understood that the foundation of power lay in a community's ability to protect itself without outside aid. They understood that nonviolence did not require that one be incapable of violence if violence is offered in return. And they understood that no matter the assurances of those in power, their safety and prosperity was not the first priority of those set above them in society. I won't get into questions of government corruption or institutional racism or start casting stones about who's a tyrant and who can't be trusted. Instead, I'll end by saying this. In the absolute best case scenario where the cops are courageous, driven, and pure of heart without exception, and your government's sole priority is to keep you happy and safe, you would still need a gun. Unless the cops are currently in your living room drinking coffee, then if something were to happen, you would need a gun to protect yourself until they arrived. And I don't think that anyone with so much as an ounce of intellectual honesty would argue that the world I just described is the world they see outside their window every day, no matter where they fall on the political spectrum. Freedom comes with independence. Independence is measured in your ability to say no thank you and walk away if the price someone demands of you is simply too high. Anything essential to your survival that you can only get from one person or agency is a handle they can use to control you, and thus, gun rights are human rights.
It's enough to make a grown man cry, and that's okay.
Well, friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoy watching these things because I sure like making them for you. Do you want to know a secret for beating the ammo shortage? AR15.com/deals is constantly updated with scores on ammo, guns, and accessories so you can get the drop on the neckbeards before they snatch up all the good stuff. So bookmark ar15.com/deals and check ar15.com/deals every day. If you want to help us keep bringing you banger content like this, please support the folks who support us. Not only does tnvc.com give you night vision with that cool, refreshing, never bitter taste that goes down smooth, they also have mounts, lights, and all sorts of other gear to make you the bump in the night. And if you want a baller cap like mine, you can get it at brownells.com. Or you can buy fly shirts like this one in our Teespring store. Or if you'd prefer to try your luck and see if you can win your choice of rad shirt from our Teespring store, post a comment containing the phrase, "Gun control hurts women" in the YouTube comments, and I will arbitrarily and unilaterally choose the best one. I love you.